This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody listening to KLEAN Radio on our flagship station 790 KABC, or people listening on satellite somewhere in the middle of the dial on XM channel 243, or on the World Wide Web at KLEANradio.com. That's clean with a K. If you go to KLEANradio.com, you can click on live stream and actually watch what Andrew and I are wearing tonight. It's very similar.
Yeah, well, you're sexy.
Yeah. It's ladies love the Judah. You know how we roll.
I don't know how that works, man. How does that work?
I don't know either, but it just happens. It's the gift of sobriety, as we say.
Is that what it is?
Yes, it is. Okay. And we have actually an amazing show tonight. We have one of my favorite people in the world in the studio tonight. It's Patrick. No, I'm joking. It's Lauri Burns from the Teen Project and Freehab. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what Freehab is. It's going to be opening pretty soon. And we have one of her amazing success stories in the studio also with us tonight, Aaron. And we have a great show. And today on Facebook, Andrew. So for everybody that is listening, we do go before the show. We ask people to post questions. Go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio. And one of the questions I had asked today was, can you prevent alcoholism? Can you prevent addiction? And I think, Andrew, we're in the field, so obviously right away we come. But a lot of people, a lot of family members sometimes think to themselves, could I have stopped this? Was there something I could have done that could have prevented this?
Yeah, well, as I've said oftentimes on the show, I think there's several different types of alcoholism. Everybody seems to think that alcoholism is like just one type of illness. If you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. And AA tends to represent it that way largely. But we know now that there's genetic predispositions to alcoholism. And there's obviously alcoholics that the first time they take a drink, they're off to the races as an alcoholic.
Like me.
And right, and then there's other people who have progressive drinking or drug problems where they build up tolerance over time until eventually they become consumed and physically or psychologically addicted to the actual substance. So, there's different ways that people get to the point of being addicted. And like I said, there's use, abuse, and then there's addiction. So there's a continuum along the line. But for some people, it's just they're going to be an alcoholic as soon as they drink. It's just you can see it. They take a drink, their eyes glaze over. They become somebody else.
You're describing me.
Yeah. But there's other people where, things like drinking moderation programs or understanding. I mean, look, the vast majority of kids that go to college engage in binge drinking. But, still only about 12% of college graduates come out alcoholics. So you could easily say that everyone in college that binge drinks or drinks excessively during that 4-year period is an alcoholic, but we wouldn't dare say that 80% of all college students are alcoholics. So, there is a problem in our culture where it's confusing that the type of drinking habits that people use and drug use habits that they have, especially in transitional periods of their life, like college, tends to be extreme, and then most moderate themselves out. But unfortunately, there's still that 12 to 15% that are going to suffer from either short-term or gradually occurring and long-term problems with addiction.
Yeah, I think it's funny because most of the answers were like, don't drink. I was like, thank you. That's very profound. But in a sense,
what's funny about that is that, a lot of people that I've treated, their parents were really bad alcoholics.
And they
would say that they would never drink and they'd never drink. And some of them had made it as long as 19, 20, 21 years. And then they have one drink and then all of a sudden, they just start using and they can't help it. And so, that's a hard one to say, just don't drink, especially if you haven't even been through that experience of drinking. But some people are so traumatized by their own parents' alcoholism and drug addiction that they choose to stop or never have a drink or use any other drugs.
So if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio, and that's one of the topics we're going to be talking about tonight, because I think to a lot of people that is a question to them. It's a question some of my family members had was, could this have been, could it have been prevented? Did you need to go that far in? So give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Let's welcome the most awesomely guest we could have on KLEAN Radio, the bodacious, the amazing Lauri Burns. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's nice to be back.
Well, it's
I think I'm figuring out the Judas charm here. It's just all charm. It's not
Well, Lauri's been in People magazine. She's been all over because I just got to say this. The reason I say this is because Lauri started something called the Teen Project. And it's an amazing place. It's in Venice Beach. She's literally given up her whole life. You have an amazing job. You work for Northrop Grumman, and you've dedicated so much of your life to helping teenagers in the foster system, because a lot of people don't know that when you're 17 and a half, you get fostered out.
That's right.
So you have tons of kids that are 17 and a half that their step parents have been getting checks, and then one day the foster parents it gets cut off, and the kids are on the street.
25,000 a year in our nation.
25,000.
It's criminal. Most people don't know.
That 25,000 kids a year are basically being told by the government, that's it.
Right.
You're done.
Right. Nobody cares.
And
nobody knows.
And so what have you done?
Well, we've tried to be the change for these kids because, I mean, when it first hit me that these kids were walking out homeless and the social workers didn't care, the judges didn't care, nobody was stopping it. I mean, it's criminal. And most people don't know. So we started going out into the world and talking about it. And as you could see, it went really big, really quick because people are horrified that this could happen in America. I mean, most of us are sending money. A lot of people sending money to other countries to help kids and people that are starving and homeless, and especially kids, like maybe Africa. But in America, you've got homeless kids walking out to the street every day.
Well, a lot of this has to do with the history of how mental health and the care of the indigent and the mentally ill has been treated by the state and federal governments throughout history. Originally, in the constitutions of both the states and the federal governments, the states are responsible for all indigent adults and mentally ill adults. And what happened was we used to have a pretty large infrastructure in most states where there was actually state-run mental hospitals and pretty good care systems, even though the care was fairly primitive. As deinstitutionalization came along with the advent of antipsychotic drugs, like Thorazine was the main one, but there were 15 key major antipsychotic drugs. The states found out that they could largely discharge everyone from the hospital, and therefore they got to go on federal disability under SSI, Social Security Disability under Medicare. And so the burden shifted financially from the state government to the federal government. But then that left this huge gaping hole with everybody in the state where they lived, where if they didn't qualify for SSI or they didn't understand SSI, and SSI really isn't enough to take care of a disability, and it certainly doesn't provide treatment. So you have all these people out there that really don't have any real resources to get help. And you're dealing with a population where there's no family help. There's no additional help.
Right, and they're not mentally ill. I mean, these are regular kids. Other kids in their school, in their class, are going to prom and getting ready for college, and these are absolutely normal kids that have been living in hopefully a nice, loving family that just go, oops, it's 18th birthday, it's D-Day. It's time for you to go homeless. Okay,
but addiction gets lumped in with mental illness. I mean, it's mental illness and addiction.
Right, but are all the foster kids addicted? No.
Well,
but that's the population you're targeting.
Right. But you do have a lot of kids that are.
We have a percentage. I wouldn't say it's a high percentage.
And no, but it's pretty amazing. So you started this thing called the Teen Project, and one of my favorite things you've done is you set up this text that children, that foster kids, all over the country could text a certain number, and within a second, all the shelters in that area come up.
Right. So we have a database of all the transitional housing, sober living, all of the shelters all over the United States, and it's constantly growing, and it runs an algorithm based on your zip code. So you text shelter and your zip code to 99,000, and it runs an algorithm on every shelter or transitional living or sober home that we know of. So you could text shelter, you could text abused in your zip code, or you could text sober in your zip code.
And it's absolutely amazing. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're in the studio tonight with Lauri Burns, founder of the Teen Project, and also soon to be opening up Freehab, which is an amazing thing you're opening up. It's essentially for people that have absolutely no money. They could call you up and say, I need help, and they could get into your rehab.
That's right, completely free, because with all of the treatment centers that are costing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, for the people that are homeless, there's absolutely no hope.
Right.
So we say free hand is the hand of hope.
And the biggest thing is you'll take them as long as they don't have insurance and as long as they can't afford to come.
Right. They have to be low income. So there's a level of income, I think it's below $17,000 a year that you have to be earning in order to come in. Yeah, but it's phenomenal. And half of the beds at Freehab are for transitional age youth, which is 17 to 24, basically the foster kids and abused kids that should have been in foster care but never actually made it there. So they're now homeless. And I've got to say, back to what you said a few minutes ago, most of these kids in foster care are not addicts, but you throw them out on the street with people that are addicted and living on
Right.
the street and homeless. And yes, they use drugs to block out the buffer of what has happened to them.
There's
that
really
they've just
There's a
lost hope on
three-pronged
life.
problem, right? There's
Right.
homelessness, there's addiction, and then there's the criminal justice system.
Right.
And all those elements come into play, especially as people are desperate, have no money and nowhere to go, and nobody taking care of them, and no obvious, clear social service program that's going to help them get on the right track and establish roots and have a healthy adulthood.
Right. So, one of the things that I'm not sure that you know about Freehab is that there was a place called People in Progress. Do you remember the place?
No.
It was around for about 40 years helping homeless. They had about 150 homeless people in this place. And they were state and federal funded. And the money dried up and the homeless people went back to the street. That was in the tail end of last year. So when we started on Freehab, we were looking for, well, we have two co-founders. One wanted a warehouse where we could walk people in, just like a massive amount of people, like a barracks. And the other one wanted an old treatment center. So we find this old People in Progress building, and it's attached to a warehouse. It couldn't have been any better. And this project has been like that since the
And I've
beginning.
been there,
Yeah.
and it's really cool
It's phenomenal.
what you're building over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact, because you're right, not everybody has insurance, not everybody could afford rehab, and you're giving people the chance.
That's right. Yeah.
And to people out there that are listening, give us a call if you'd like to talk about this. It's 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. You brought an amazing young guy into the studio tonight. We're going to get to him after the break. But before then, Aaron, say hello to everybody out there.
Hi.
And he's amazing. And it's really cool with what you do and with what Andrew does with KLEAN, is that you get to see the hope. Not everybody that you guys get to help is always going to stay sober, or not that everybody's an addict, but get better, and you get to watch people grow.
That's right. Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
it's really
Yeah.
cool. Let's go to Heather in Vermont checking in. How you doing, Heather?
I was generally okay during the week, but I've been really kind of pissed off and dealing with anger since Friday. And I don't usually get angry because I usually swallow and stuff anger, but I've just been having difficulty because I've been angry a lot.
Well, let's just so everybody knows, Andrew, Heather's been calling in the last couple of weeks. She's sober a long time, and about a week ago you said, you and your husband decided you were going to get divorced.
Yeah. And part of the reason that I was angry was because on Friday my husband called and he's like, "Oh, I'm having second thoughts, is there any chance that you'd take me back and not get divorced?" And I'm like, "Well, no, there's just too much instability." No.
Heather, that's very common. People, when they first separate and then they're going to get divorced, they initially they feel a sense of relief, and then they have a sense of regret. And that regret is that they think back to the good times, and they think that they can just go back to the good times without
Almost
having
euphoric
to
recall.
Right? Yeah, without having to take responsibility or fix the problems that created the issue that's developed into wanting to be divorced. My big thing would be, what are you doing to take care of yourself? You're married, or benefits through your husband, health benefits, and if so, make sure you get your teeth fixed, go to the doctor, do everything you possibly can prior to actually getting divorced.
This is spoken like a true champ.
It's important. And I've worked with a lot of women who, or for one reason or not, sacrifice a lot of their career for their children.
Yeah.
I don't know what your whole story is, Heather, but this is good advice generally for people out there. And if you're going to be divorced, recognize that you might lose a lot of benefits, and you're going to obviously have less income because you won't be sharing some fixed costs. So, do everything you can right now to take care of yourself and be ready for trying to survive the trauma of going through a divorce, because it is one of the top, stressors that someone can go through in their lifetime.
And, last week, Heather, when you had called us up and Dr. Koh was on, we were talking about, the stages of grief and all that stuff. And, you were in a good mood last week. And this week, obviously, it's a little harder. Were you able to make meetings this week, reach out to your support group?
I did go. Well, I went to 2 meetings, and I called 3 people, and I called one of my longest time friends from recovery. She's known me since before I had a year sobriety. I mean, we're that long-term kind of friends, and she actually had talked to my husband, and it was nice for me to talk with her because she validated my feelings, because he had called her talking about how he was having second thoughts. And
Did you ask for the divorce, Heather?
no, he did.
Oh, he
But
did.
he had actually threatened a couple of years ago, and And I'm like, and he's like, well, what about marriage counseling? And he's like, no, I don't see the point. And,
right, so he was able to give you the signal that there was a problem, but then he wasn't willing to do anything to try and fix it.
Yeah, and then we went into marriage counseling, and he got hope, and then we renewed our wedding vows. And then it's just, he has a lot of mental health issues, and he's just been unraveling and kind of unstable. And I think that part of the reason he's having second thoughts isn't because he loves me so much or he's in love with me and misses me so much, is that things are falling apart for him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the pain of going through a divorce is extreme, and human beings try to go whichever direction is less pain. You know,
It's very similar to addiction.
Well, and it's similar to basic experiments with like amoebas, where you put them in a solution, and if there's acid on one side and then base in the middle on the other side, they'll try to go to the middle where they're comfortable and in the right pH level. And human beings are the same thing. They'll go to what like the lowest path of pain.
I'm gonna have to write that down. That was great.
Oh, thank you, Judah. And I learned it from my biology teacher in 7th grade. Anyway, so I have to give him credit. Anyway, but addiction is the same. You're right. And one of the problems with addiction, Heather, is you've already been through addiction, and you know that there's like a slight temporary feeling of relief if you were to relapse. But you need to keep reminding yourself that this is something that's transient. Divorce is painful, but it also gives you a chance to reestablish your own identity. Often people get divorced and they'll be like, oh, so much of my regular personality I put aside for this other person. I actually like this kind of music instead of the kind I've been having to listen to because I was married to this other guy. And you might find that there's social groups that you weren't involved in and you stopped losing interest in. So I'd think back before you were married or during when your marriage was happy, and think about the things that made you happy during that period, and try and reinvent yourself and go back and rediscover yourself.
Yeah, I mean, especially now that I have income, because the story was while we were married, I was in graduate school and he was taking the financial brunt of everything, and then I had no money, so I didn't have the money to do the things I used to do before we were married.
Okay. Well, go have some fun.
Yeah, go
take
have
a vacation.
Heather, and listen,
get a good lawyer.
One of the biggest things that could help you also is that when you're going through a rough time, obviously is being of service. But somebody I know in the studio tonight could definitely use a friend in Vermont to be of service to her projects, which is Lauri Burns. And go check out the Teen Project. Okay, Heather?
That's right. We have homeless kids in Vermont as well, all over the streets. So anytime you want to be of service, it really helps you to get out of yourself. I always tell people, if you're in a lot of pain and you're staring at yourself and feeling bad, get out and help someone in more pain than you are, and you'll feel so much better about everything you're going through.
I kid you not, Heather. We spent Christmas this year at the Teen Center, at the Teen Project. It was amazing. That's when I met Aaron over here, and I met so many of the wonderful people. And it really has helped change my life in the past years being affiliated with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm also really lucky in that I actually work at a mental health agency. So,
but this is for fun, Heather.
Fun and for free,
Heather. This is for fun and for free. So please look it up. It's theteenproject.com.
Thank you so much for
calling,
Thanks a lot,
Heather. I'll
Hey,
talk
thank
to you
you.
next week.
Bye.
And that was Heather. And Lauri, I really mean that. You're right. It's for fun and for free. There's so many people out there. If you're going through a rough time, especially, Andrew, the longer you're staying sober, sometimes it does help to start giving back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like being involved with other people, and it gives you perspective and takes you out of yourself. So
That's right.
And did I give the right website, teenproject.com?
You did. Thank you.
I better have. Let's go
Yes.
right away. By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Let's go to Jamie, who wants to talk about the foster care system. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Jamie.
Jamie, you there?
Jamie, you there? Going once, going twice. Jamie, give us a call back. I have no idea what Rand is saying, but 3 minutes. I got you, Rand. And it takes a lot of people to put on this show. I want to thank Rand, but sometimes we forget. I thank Patrick over there. Thank Steve. Thank the girl that I don't know her name behind the boards over there. But Andrew,
She just made up a name.
let's call Stella. And thank you,
beer.
Thank you, Stella. And we have, one of my favorite things is that we're talking about tonight, and I want to get back more to this, is can we prevent drug addiction? Can we prevent alcoholism? And I loved, Andrew, what you're saying, that there are separate types. There are people like me who, from the get-go, were alcoholic, but then there are people that progressively...
Yeah, and we see that a lot with pain pills now, where people they go in with a problem with their back or whatever, and then slowly over time they become addicted to opiates.
I don't know. Can you really stop it, though? Do you really know that it's here until it's arrived? And, it's funny. You were saying, people that wouldn't drink because their parents were an alcoholic. Well, that's my case and maybe Aaron's case as well. It's why I went straight to shooting up, So you never know how that's going to look on the other side. At least I didn't drink.
Right. Well, right? I generally view addiction as all the same. It's all a compulsive disorder. So whether it's a process addiction like gambling or whether it's, heroin use or whether it's alcoholism, it's all part of the same sort of general dysfunction within the brain. So,
in the mind of an alcoholic, though, maybe not, right? I wasn't like my mom. I wasn't like my dad. You know how we do that. I wasn't as bad as my friend who's now homeless, so.
Well, I think there definitely is. I think there definitely is that thing of, I wasn't, me personally, I just drank, but I always say that, Andrew, I just drank. And we hear people say that a lot. They minimize drinking because.
Look, everybody's different. Everybody's biochemical makeup is different to some extent. And yet we're all remarkably the same. But different people, and I can almost, if you tell me what drug they use, I can generally tell you what underlying mental health problem they have. So, people that have thought disorders tend to lean towards amphetamines, and people that have mood disorders tend to lean towards depressants and opiates. And, so we have different types of personalities and different type of issues going on with people from a, psychological standpoint. And drugs are used to self-medicate generally.
Let's get to Jaime quickly. Jaime, welcome back.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
What can we help you
today?
with?
Well, I just wanted to thank the guests that we do have.
Lauri Burns.
Lauri, she is an amazing woman to be putting out this information for individuals like myself who were not emancipated from the system, but was a ward of the court for 10 years. And I was able to actually get into the Job Corps. But then I screwed that up, and my life was downhill after that.
What happened?
So, I'm 41 now. I got in trouble for selling drugs. But, the point is that back then in 1980, we didn't have this type of service. We didn't have these type of people that were all heart and could put together all of these, great informational. Websites.
Hey, I'm right there with you, Jaime, because I was a ward of the court as well, probation and group home, and I aged out of the system. And you're right, nobody knew and nobody was there to help. And as a matter of fact, back in the old days, they used to change placements every 6 months because they were fearing that the kids might bond to the people they were with. So what they created was a bunch of people that can't bond, and that was my and probably your time as well of being in the system. We just kept on moving and never bonding to anyone.
Right. And that was my trouble, and because my main problem was I used to get in trouble a lot because I would start fights with other children that were interfering with my time with a counselor that I may have wanted to bond with. And so I kept hopping around from residential treatment facilities, psychiatric facilities, group homes, foster homes, and I actually refused to get adopted for like 3 or 4 times, because I was still waiting for my parents to come back.
And that's a very common thing, right?
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time. I've heard it from foster kids that I've taken in, that somebody wanted to adopt them and they were really close to them, but they just didn't want it. They don't want a family. They've had the family thing. They've been hurt by the family, and they don't want a family.
Jaime, let's go to now. How are you doing?
Now? Well, I'm a recovering addict now.
Okay.
Today I have 5 months.
Oh, that's amazing, Jaime.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And, Lauri, sorry, Jaime.
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Other than that, I'm back on my feet. I'm not like a productive member of society, as we say, yet. I do have I have 6 commitments.
Great,
that's
awesome.
One on the area level, and 5 others on the meeting level. So I'm keeping myself nice. I don't want to get too like neck deep, but I want to get waist deep in it. That way I keep going to meetings and keep hearing the word and just so I can get. And I'm about to go back to school in 4 days.
That's
college,
amazing.
So.
And that really is amazing. Do you know of the Teen Project?
No, I don't. And now that I am aware of it, I want to maybe do something, along those lines, because I'm going back to school to do some type of social service. But because I'm a 2-strike felon, I don't know if I can get into those type of jobs.
Well, you can always be a volunteer like you are now. So.
Right.
And Lord
That's
knows
great.
they could use the help.
Yes, we're mostly volunteers at the Teen Project.
Yeah.
So we're a national program when we've got three part-time people and the 500 volunteers. So that's how we do it. The money goes to the kids.
Are both your strikes felonies for drug selling or abuse or possession?
Pardon me?
Your 2 strikes, were they violent crimes or were they drug related?
One was possession, and the other one was that was a felony forgery out of Texas.
Well, at least it's
When
not
they say don't
abuse, like Andrew was starting to say. If it was abuse, you'd be in a different situation with the kids.
So I mean, I just don't want to everybody think that any felon can get into
Right.
people treatment
Yeah.
even as a volunteer. But that being said, a lot of what you're seeing that the fact that the criminal justice system picked you up and even I blame the psychiatric system. I early in my career I owned a psychiatric hospital for adolescents. Actually, I didn't own it. I'm sorry. I was a program director. I started it. This was before I started owning hospitals. Anyway, and I was horrified how many kids were in there that were coming out of foster care or group homes, and that they were stuck in this psychiatric hospital and for mostly anger management issues.
Right.
And they were heavily medicated by psychiatrists, and they'd be going to school in a psychiatric hospital.
Right.
And I'm like, this is not a healthy environment to try and raise
This is my
people.
story. You're right. Yeah, they're highly medicated, and especially the kids in foster care. I get them on 4 or 5 different meds that are conflicting with each other, but every time you give them a new medication and a new diagnosis, you get more money for them. So it's this corrupt system that we
vicious
probably
cycle.
It's not,
could use a
I
couple
have to say
hours
this.
on.
I have to say it's not just that the system's corrupt, it's that the system's horribly broken.
Right.
And these people need help. Everybody needs, there's a lot of people that really need a lot of help. The problem is that it's only criminal justice or extreme psychiatric measures. There's nothing in between. Like, there's nothing reasonable. And one of the reasons I started rehabs was that instead of just going and starting more psychiatric hospitals, and I got out of the psychiatric hospitals, was because of reimbursement. Medicare cut average length of stay from 120 days to 8 days in less than 3 years. Now the average length of stay in a psychiatric hospital is 4 days. So if you try and kill yourself,
on a 5150.
if you try and
Get
kill
over
yourself,
it in 4
you
days.
got 4
Yeah.
days, and it's like we used to
4
take
days to
30
get over
days
it.
just
It's
to
great.
like see what the people's problem was.
Well, it's like pregnant women, right? Now they're out in 6 hours. It used to be.
Yeah, and one of the
Schedule
number
it.
one growth areas for addiction, and I refuse to get into it, is adolescent treatment facilities where it's like Aspen schools and these places. And some of them do great treatment, but there's a lot of money, and there was a lot of money from the federal government coming in to block grants for states to treat adolescents in really high acuity settings, which they didn't really need.
So, Jaime, do us two things. Go to the Teen Project online. Go to theteenproject.com. Find out how you can volunteer. Go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio, like us, and talk about this more, because this is a subject apparently not enough people know about, Lauri.
That's
We're going to
right,
get to
yeah.
Aaron in a minute or two.
America's secret.
And there are 25,000 children a year, teenagers, children, that are being fostered out of the system, that are being basically, like Jaime, let go on the street. It's great that Jaime, 41 years old now, 5 months sober, has gotten it, is getting it. But how many people out there are? And I don't think enough people know these numbers. It's 25,000 a year being fostered out of the system. If you just
Tragic.
tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We'll be back in a minute.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits. Now back to Andrew Spanswick and Judah Friedman.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. We have a great show going on tonight. We're discussing why ladies love the Judah, and it's been a 35-minute show about that. No, just joking around.
You're not LL Cool J.
LLTJ. It's LLTJ. You don't forget that. And so everybody out there that's listening, go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio. Like the show. We have a great show. We're going to introduce Aaron. We're in the studio with Lauri Burns tonight, founder of the Teen Project, soon to be Freehab. And Aaron is one of her prodigal. Is that a good way of saying it?
You can say it like that. That's
an
okay.
amazing success story of the Teen
Yes,
Project. I met you over
truly.
Christmas time at the Teen Project, and it's great to see you're still doing amazingly well. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, just like that you guys were talking about earlier, I was in the foster care system and aged out into being homeless. I decided to move back in with my mom, not realizing that she was just using somebody to have a place to stay. And after a week of being 18, she cheated on her boyfriend and they kicked us all out on the streets. And so I just, moved around a couple of times, found a couple friends, stayed on their couch, but things got rough and I decided to, move to a different city with my mom and everything. And we started sleeping on the sidewalk in Venice Beach. And I ended up finding a place called The Pad, and that's pretty much where my life turned around.
Tell me what it's like, people out there, that are in the middle class or upper class, and they say, people sleeping on the side of the street, it's their fault, they should just get a job. What was, did you experience a lot of discrimination? How did it feel to be that age and sort of be in such a hopeless and helpless situation at that time?
Well, yeah, I felt a lot of discrimination about it. It hurt me inside, people would look at me in disgust and everything. It's just like, I'm only 18, my life hasn't even started, and it's just, I have to deal with what my parents have put me through.
So what would you say to people like that have that disdain for seeing homeless people on the side of the street? Is there anything you'd like to tell them about, maybe give them a sense of perspective of how you end up like that, or,
Well, first, just don't judge a book by its cover. You don't know anybody unless you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Right.
And so other than that, just go out there and help. Not every homeless person is a bad person. Not every homeless person is going to use that money for drugs.
I think one problem is that, we emptied the mental health hospitals like I spoke about earlier. So you have so many, a third of the homeless or plus are chronic mentally ill people, but there's 2/3 that aren't, that are suffering from this bad economy or have suffered from dysfunctional families or what have you.
Well, let me tell you something about that. That's a good point that you bring up. A lot of the homeless kids won't go to a shelter because of the mentally ill in the shelter. So the homeless kids would rather stay on the street, all bunched up by a tree, or right, Aaron, or on the beach together because they're scared to go to one of those shelters where the mentally ill are sleeping and get raped or.
And not only that, you make friends on the streets. You have people that'll have
like
your back.
Like a family,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost becomes like a gang almost, and you have to hang out. And
well, pretty much, it's just like if you're sleeping on the sidewalk, people walk around you all night when you're sleeping, and it's just like you want to have somebody there to feel like they have your back and you have theirs. You guys can protect each other.
I mean, one of the reasons I got into working with the mentally ill, and you're not mentally ill, obviously, but the reason I got into working with the mentally ill was I looked around and saw what group of people are the most feared and vilified, and it was the homeless mentally ill. But the homeless get wrapped up in that as well, not just the mentally ill, and that's a complete failure of our society to properly fund mental health funding so that population is taken care of. And then we have this issue of homelessness and ongoing problems with that, and juveniles especially, where they're coming out and they have no support system or help, and then they get stigmatized, and that stigma brings people down. I mean, people that have had a fairly easy life, and a lot of people, still have problems. So, to overcome and be a survivor of what you've been through is really an incredible story.
And so tell us a little bit about it. What was going on? You were sleeping next to your mom on the boardwalk?
Well, yes, I was, my mom and her boyfriend, and then it was me and my girlfriend at the time, and we were all sleeping on the sidewalk, like down the street from the boardwalk. And we all had our little job at the poster shop or something, but we're making a little bit of money, but like all of our money would go towards alcohol or weed or something, so then we could sleep during the night. We could cope with what we're going through. And I found the Teen Project and the Pad, and so I just drifted away from my mom because I realized that my mom put me in the position I was in, and that whenever I'm with her, she always brings me down. And so I found Lauri, and Lauri took a liking to my girlfriend at the time, and so she offered me a place to stay as long as I stayed sober, and I did the due. I could get whatever I can out of the program, and I ended up sticking with the Teen Project, and I got into a sober living, and they bought me a car and put me through school.
How long ago was this?
A year ago. Right?
Yeah, almost a year ago, exactly.
I think it was about a year.
That's absolutely that's an amazing story. And what happened to your girlfriend?
That's a whole nother Oprah.
Yeah.
But I think
that's show.
But I think that the reason I'm asking is because you did, Lauri. What's amazing is how Lauri met you through your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to her, but you're the one that stayed.
Let's just say she didn't want to change.
Right.
Yeah,
And the thing is, we see that all the time. Is that somebody comes to get help for somebody, and then it's the other person that ends up getting help.
Right.
So it's been over a year since you've had drugs or alcohol.
Yes. Well, no, I had to slip up a couple times.
That's okay. And that's one of the things Andrew and I talk about on the show all the time is not beating people up.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I really believe strongly.
So a huge pet peeve of ours.
Yeah,
so you don't
relapse is part of the problem of addiction, and the most important thing is not if you relapse or not, but if you relapse, how quickly you can get back into the program or back into getting help without beating yourself up about the relapse.
So you're back in school, or you're just
Well,
starting?
the school I went to was a trade school, and it was a 3-month course, and I graduated the trade school and got a job as what I was doing in the trade school, and it's CNC machining. And so lately I've been that's pretty much what I've been doing since then was the CNC machining.
That's amazing. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. Give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We have an amazing show tonight. We're talking about the foster care system. We're talking about addiction and how to prevent it. But one of the things we were talking about before the break, Andrew, is that most people don't know 25,000 people a year are fostered out of the foster care system.
Yeah, the other thing that really upsets me about all this is that we have so many people out there that stigmatize the homeless and the mentally ill, and they don't realize that most of these people can become functional. And if society would just spend a little bit of money on working with the mentally ill, setting up proper systems, working with people that are homeless and giving them opportunities and getting them off the street, it would cost the society so much less money. And, and when you walk down the street and you walk down past 8 or 9 homeless people and nobody cares about them. And I was at a restaurant the other day in New York, and like the maitre d' came out and fed the guy's dog, but didn't give any bread to the guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I go to him, I'm not going to eat at this restaurant unless you give that guy some bread too. And then he got totally embarrassed, and then he came out and brought the guy like a whole meal.
Wow.
And I was like,
That's,
And
then you found out you were on that TV show. What would you do?
Yeah, right. Yeah, what would you do?
And, but no, how old are you?
Right now, I just turned 20 last week.
So, Lauri, how old were you when you were about 18 and a half. And I think it's amazing is that people look at, you see these teenagers on the boardwalk, and it's very much like you're talking about, Andrew. Who wants to sleep on a boardwalk?
Right? Who would choose that?
Who
right?
would choose living, not even on the boardwalk? You were a block off the boardwalk.
Well, my mom chose that.
Yeah.
She felt like it was easier to be homeless and not sleep inside than have any responsibilities at all.
Right.
Right.
And so she would rather get drunk every day and sleep on the boardwalk than to have a financial income and have responsibilities and take care of herself.
So your mom's struggling obviously with alcoholism, with addiction,
Yes,
probably some sort of mental illness.
Both my parents they were both addict and alcoholics. I've been around drugs my whole life.
So I think it's a great point what Andrew is saying is when you look at people, when you are going down the boardwalk, realize that there are stories.
Everybody, I'm not saying that everybody's a victim. Look, there's some people that are adults and they make decisions that are bad, and there's bad people in the world, and there are places for those people to be taken care of in the criminal justice system. But we've become a society where for every 200 plus mentally ill people in prison, we only have one psychiatrist available. Yeah. That isn't reasonable. That isn't a system that really is saying, hey, you know what, we're going to be responsible for our citizens. That's a system that says we don't care. That's a system that says that, if you have somebody that's mentally ill and homeless and depressed and you stick it, where's the worst place you could put them for them to get better? Prison, where they're locked up, totally, they get food, but then they're also traumatized by being in this environment where their self-esteem goes right down the drain and there's nothing left for them in society.
And I love what you're saying. And, this is the, it's funny if people knew some of our views on certain things, but when it comes to this stuff, you and I, we're very compassionate people. And
well, not to plug, I'm going to be on Piers Morgan again tomorrow night, and it's like, he's all anti-gun, and I'm pro-gun. I have a huge gun collection. I like guns.
You can plug it. It's okay.
Anyway.
But
I'm very pro.
Right. We're not these
social issues, homelessness, mental illness. I mean, come on. These are the responsibilities of the state and the federal government.
And it's a lot of prevention with somebody like Andrew, with something like
Aaron.
Lauri's doing. Aaron. We have an Aaron. Please don't be
Andrew
offended.
here.
Andrew's over here.
Every time I say a guest name incorrectly, I go back to the one time I said it, and Andrew and I got the emails from hell for the next week.
From the guy's wife.
From the guy's wife. It didn't even come from him. But Lauri, in a sense, you're doing that. You're doing that future prevention.
Right.
You
Well,
know.
something that comes to mind when Andrew's talking is people coming out of prison get gate money.
Yep.
Foster kids don't get gate money.
Yep.
They don't get anything.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They leave with nothing. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is Freehab, the new place that we're opening up in LA, is 50% for kids, 17 to 24, that transitional age youth. Because we recently did a study of all the places in LA, shelters, transitional housing, 1% for that age, 1%. So this is exciting that we're now going to be able to take kids from the PAD, and for those of you who don't know, the PAD is stands for Protection and Direction. It's a center right off Venice Beach where there's hundreds of homeless kids sleeping all over the beach. They can walk in there, tell us their story, and we're going to help them to get schooling and housing and all that. So now we have 50 more beds open for these youth. As soon as they walk into the pad, they can get assessed, and we can transport them straight to Freehab. And Freehab is a prototype of what Aaron just talked about, which is getting sober, getting trained in a job, getting job skills and internship, and back into a normal life, cars, all of that.
But of course, you have to. The kid that goes in there has to want it. They have to want the change.
Definitely.
Absolutely, I think that's true for any kind of change. You know, that's one concern I've always had with things that are free. There has to be some buy-in. Yeah. So, but here, people are in so much pain. Obviously, there's buy-in, and the buy-in is that they're actually trusting you and giving all this information to you and trying to get help for something that's very painful and shameful often to deal with.
And one of the things we've learned, by the way, about the, you're talking about with the free stuff is that, obviously, Aaron, you've had a couple slips, but you constantly want to keep doing better. But it doesn't matter for the addict, no matter how much you buy them or give them, if they still want to use, they don't really care about the car.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll just
Well, that's
keep
why
it.
there's rehabs
They'll
that cost,
find the excuse.
There's rehabs that cost $90,000 a month. And,
Right.
they go to these spa-like rehabs. And, it shows obviously that it's not about money or things necessarily. It's about wanting a desire to be mentally healthy and free of addiction.
I know, I was amazed. I went to Freehab and they had a pool. And
shut.
I'm joking. And they had a sauna. And
you got your pedicure done.
yeah, and it's actually it's pretty cool because it's actually 5 miles away from my house. It's going to be an amazing
Is it
facility.
really?
Yeah,
Wow, awesome.
it's and that means I get to see you a lot more.
Good.
But how do people? People I think also sometimes have fear of helping because they don't have the money to help, not realizing that there's so much you could do.
There is so much. That reminds me of what Scott Redmond used to say. Did you know Scott Redmond?
Yes, I did. God rest his soul.
Don't tell me you can't give anything. If you've got a car and a quarter, you can give a nickel and a ride.
And
that's how I think. Everyone's got something to give. The guy that saved my life, for those of you who don't know, so I was a system kid that aged out, and I ended up working the streets as a prostitute to survive. And I was taken in the woods one night by 2 gunmen and almost killed. And the guy who saved my life had nothing. He didn't even have enough hope for himself, but he had enough hope to give me a ride to the detox, and that was all it took, just a ride. You didn't even have the quarter or the nickel or whatever, So don't say you don't have enough to give because everyone's got something to give. This guy that drove me to detox was an abused child that never dealt with his own abuse, and he wasn't sober, but he gave me a ride. And I had no hope for anything. And it was that little teeny bit of giving. Okay, I'm going to give you a ride over there. That was all I needed, just that little bit. Saved my life.
And by the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're running out of time, but give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're in the studio tonight with one of my favorite people because she's literally given up so much of her life. I don't even think you look at it like that. You've just given life to so many people. When I talk to you, you never sound like, oh, I have to do this. It's always like you get to do this stuff, and you're not just saying that to sound corny. You're just happy.
Well, my life was saved that night.
Yeah.
The night that I just told you about with the 2 gunmen. My life was saved. I should have literally died that night. So every moment now that I'm alive, I'm giving back to others. And, an old lady once said to me, an old psychic lady, as a matter of fact, said, 1 minute you're going to be a little kid swinging on a swing, and the next day you're going to be an old lady. Make sure you do in this lifetime what you were here to do, and I truly believe.
She didn't say that to you last week, right?
She did. Oh my God.
Well, I think
You're so silly.
what I think it's when people get a second chance at life.
Yeah.
And America's great for that. I mean, you have to admit that this incredible society that if you do take advantage of a second chance, this is a country that will generally, take you back in. Some of the
third and fourth chances.
Yeah, well, some of the laws have gotten ridiculous. I mean, this third strike stuff for low-level felonies that shouldn't happen. I mean, especially drug-related. There's some laws that are really just out of control these days. But in general, America's a very forgiving nation. We're a very giving nation. We're people that want to help. It's the people out there that really help that make a difference on the private sector that I applaud the most. It's tough when you start talking about full reform, and especially governmental reform, because you're talking about billions of dollars that have to go in and then be put through this whole administrative process to then figure out how to pay for people to get help. One of the reasons I started for-profit centers and not a nonprofit organization was because I realized that as soon as I connected myself to any federal or state money, I'd be told how to run my own facilities.
That's right. And you spend 99% of your time doing paperwork, and we're not
doing
going to do
paperwork
that.
instead of helping people.
Right.
And then being stuck with discharge rules, like having to discharge people after 4 days when you know damn well you can't help them in 4 days.
And that's what happened with the old facility. The guys said they spent very little time with the clients, talking to them and helping them, and all of their time was spent doing paperwork. So the Teen Project is 100% privately funded, and Freehab will be 100% privately funded by corporations, individuals, and foundations that care about other people.
I think that's absolutely amazing. How many beds is it going to be?
It's going to start with 100 and grow to 200.
It's a lot of beds, and that's amazing. I mean, to people that are just tuned in, we're talking with Lauri Burns, who's setting up this project, and Andrew and I, Andrew is obviously one of the co-owners of KLEAN Treatment Center, and we love this idea that you're able to give away
Judah,
free beds.
I gotta say, it's not all Lauri. You know what I mean? I am creating the project, but the visionary was Bill Johnson of Demarest Films, who has struggled with his own addiction and alcoholism, and by the grace of God, he's been clean and sober for quite a while now. But it was his dream to open this place to give people a chance. And if you know Bill, his family is the Franklin Funds. He wasn't one of his people that needed it, but he got to a level in his addiction, believe it or not, where he was homeless, and he went to that. So Bill's a stand that we will help the people that have no help, that have no hope.
Right.
So he's really the visionary and mastermind behind this thing. So I can't take full credit. And then, of course, you've got Russell Brand, who was there with Bill when this thing started, and they got their heads together and said, what do we want to do? And Russell said a warehouse, and Bill said a treatment center, and boom, we find this treatment center attached to a warehouse that had just shut down. And not only do we find the place, we find all of the old staff that had been laid off that want their jobs back. So it has been a blessing from the start.
Like it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. That's right, Aaron.
You're helping people and creating jobs at the same time.
Look at that.
Yeah, look at that. Mm-hmm. So how do people help out? How do people find out about this?
You can go to freehab.net and read up about what we're doing. You can go to theteenproject.com, or you can see us on Facebook, either Freehab or the Teen Project.
And
so it's facebook.com/freehab.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I want to thank, we're not done with time yet, but I want to get back to Aaron. Aaron, you're 20 years old now. You're sober. What's next? You're in school. What?
I'm not in school yet. I want to go back to school to become farther into the trade I'm in. But right now, I'm just going to take it one day at a time.
And to people out there, I love the fact you're sleeping on the, you weren't even sleeping on the boardwalk. You were with your mom. You were homeless. People passing you on the street, not realizing you have an amazing story.
Yes, and it's kind of funny, too, because a coworker of mine, I was talking to her, and when I told her that I was homeless a year ago, and I was actually sleeping on the sidewalk, she treated me a lot different. Like, she was like judging me because of my past, and she treated me like a normal human being when I was at work up until the point that I told her I used to be homeless. And it was just like she acted weird.
That is horrible. I hate to hear that.
Let's just go quickly. We have Ernest calling in Englewood, New Jersey. And that's where my parents are, in Englewood, California. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Ernest.
Hey, Ernest, you there?
Hello, Ernest. We lost Ernest.
Hello.
Hi, Ernest. How are you?
Hey, yeah, fine. I wanted to know if you have anything for older people, because say in the 30s in that sense.
Yes, Freehab is 50% for the young kids, and the other 50% is 18 up to the end. So, yeah.
And that's the same thing with us at KLEAN.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing, Ernest. And Ernest, sorry.
What is the telephone number for the place?
Well, Freehab's not open yet, but Ernest, let me give you this number. It's 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. That's an absolutely free call. And what I love about Ernest, what I love about your call is, and Andrew and I talk about this all the time, you don't see 80-year-olds on Celebrity Rehab. You don't see 80-year-old, and you don't see...
But the irony is people are living longer, and one of the trends we've seen in our treatment centers is that we're now getting people, in a large percentage of people that are 65 plus.
Yeah, it's great.
Because now people are living to be in their 80s, and drunk grandma at 65 isn't going to stick around for 15 years. So, in the house and be happy. So we're seeing a lot of people that are elderly or, in the geriatric population, as we call it in the medical field.
I want to change that word.
Yeah, I know you hate it. But actually realizing that, you know what, I can have a good 20 years of life still, and I should have a 20-year plan. And part of that needs to be health conscious and be sober and not give up on your life just because you're a little bit older.
Ernest, did you get that number? Ernest? Ernest,
we're having trouble with this call.
Yeah.
Anyway, just
Ernest,
tell them check us out on KLEANradio.com, or you can go to Facebook.com/KLEANradio.
But Ernest, if you just, to people out there, we're running out of time, but give us a call at 888-601-6040, 888-601-6040. Call that right now. There are people standing by, Ernest. And the reason I love that call, Andrew, is because just how we're talking about people being misrepresented because of homelessness or the way mental illness. People don't realize that. And I want to talk about this maybe on next week's show. I think it's a great topic that you could be 70 and need help with alcoholism and addiction.
Well, especially now with all the medications and painkillers that geriatric patients are on. So we're seeing more and more problems where they have so many medications they need to actually be detoxed just from regular medications and baseline, which means basically figure out what's really going on when they're off most of their medication.
And it's got to be so bizarre.
Proper medication.
Think about how bizarre it would be for a 40-year-old who might have a problem with their kid, but then also might have to call up for help and say, I think my parent's a drug addict.
Right. Well, a lot of this is that we also have a disjointed medical system where people can have to see multiple doctors. There's no integration of doctors speaking to each other. So you get people on multiple pills. I mean, we have clients come in all the time. One's on Klonopin and Valium, not realizing that they're both benzodiazepines.
Right.
And one doctor is giving it and the other doctor is giving it. They don't know that each other's giving it. So we have that problem. I just really quickly do want to plug myself on Piers Morgan. I hate to be so brash about it, but it took a lot of work to get to this. Tomorrow night I will be on talking about the mental illness and the issues of mental illness and the future of mental illness in America. So that's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern time and 9 p.m. West Coast time and 9 p.m. East Coast time live.
And I'll be on the Starbucks on San Vicente and Santa Monica.
And you can get just as much help from Judah as you can from me.
I appear there live, usually about 11:30, getting a huge cup of coffee. I will talk to you. And
daily schedule.
Yeah, and about 2 hours later, I'll be at that same Starbucks.
And I'll only be on Piers for about 15 minutes. So.
But I repeat that cycle every 3 hours on Mondays. Aaron, I want to thank you. It's great to see you because I saw you on Christmas. I met you on Christmas, and you're just a sweet guy. And I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to talk to Lauri about this, and we're going to have you on again. And I want to know about this from you, Andrew, too, as we're running out of time. At what point do you not tell people your full story? Maybe when you're at work, it's not a great idea to tell somebody.
There are issues of boundaries, what are appropriate boundaries. I think that's something you learn. And I think when you've come out of a lot of trauma and a lot of things, you're so proud of what you've achieved, and you want to trust everyone, but not everyone's necessarily able to be, you're able
not
to trust
everybody needs to know everything. That's what my therapist told me.
It's important to be guarded and be sort of careful, but at the same point still be an open and loving human being. So.
You're an awesome guy, Aaron. I want to
you.
Plug the pad because you're an amazing success story.
You did a great job.
Thanks
You're nervous
for
at all.
having me, guys. Yeah.
Lauri, thank you again.
Thank
you, Rand. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Carletta. Thank you, Patrick. Andrew's going to be on Piers Morgan tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
Yep.
I'm going to be at Starbucks at 1 and at 11. And I just want to thank all our fans out there. You guys are amazing. You guys that post on Facebook all the time. You guys rock. That's facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. Misfortune Radio is next. This is KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.